Our first verse is 1 Corinthians 13:6.
Okay.
In English it reads, "Rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth."
And in Spanish, it's no se goza de la injusticia, mas se goza de la verdad.
I find it interesting how both languages use the word rejoice in relation to truth. It's not just about acknowledging truth.
Right.
It's about actively celebrating it.
Yeah.
What do you think? Is there a difference between simply knowing something is true and truly rejoicing in it?
There's a huge difference. Think about it.
Yeah.
You can know that eating healthy is good for you, but do you actually find joy in choosing a salad over a burger?
Right.
It's when we find delight in truth that it really starts to shape our choices in our lives.
It's a great analogy. So for you, rejoicing in truth might mean finding genuine satisfaction in making healthy choices, even when they're not the easiest ones.
Exactly. And for someone else, it might mean finding joy in honesty,
Right.
even when it's difficult to speak up.
Yeah.
It's about finding that deep inner satisfaction that comes from aligning yourself with what you believe is true.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great challenge for all of us to not just passively accept truth,
Right.
but to actively seek it out and celebrate it.
Yeah.
Now, let's move on to our second verse for Sunday,
Okay.
Isaiah 43:4.
Okay.
In English it says, "Since thou wast precious in my sight, thou hast been honorable, and I have loved thee. Therefore will I give men for thee, and people for thy life."
And the Spanish version is, porque a mis ojos fuiste de gran estima, fuiste honorable, y yo te amé. Daré pues hombres por ti, y naciones por tu vida.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
The language in both versions is so rich and evocative. This verse really emphasizes God's deep love for us and the incredible value he places on each individual.
It's almost overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah.
To think that the creator of the universe
Right.
sees us as precious and honorable. And
Yeah.
not only that, but he's willing to give men and nations for our lives.
Yeah.
It really speaks to the immeasurable extent of his love.
It's almost hard to wrap your head around it,
Yeah.
but I think it's a message we all need to hear,
Right.
especially when we're feeling down or discouraged.
Yeah.
I know I need to be reminded of my own worth sometimes.
Yeah.
How about you? Do you ever struggle with feeling valuable?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We all have those moments of self-doubt, but this verse is like a lifeline.
Right.
It reminds us that our value doesn't come from our accomplishments or what others think of us, but from the one who created us.
Right.
And that's a truth worth rejoicing in.
That's a great takeaway from these first two verses.
Yeah.
To find joy in truth and to remember our inherent worth in God's eyes. Now, let's move on to Monday, March 17th.
Sounds good to me.
We'll begin with 1 Samuel 17:3.
Okay.
In English it says, "And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side. And there was a valley between them."
And in Spanish, it's, y los filisteos estaban sobre un monte de un lado, Israel estaba sobre otro monte del otro lado, y el valle estaba entre ellos.
This verse paints such a vivid picture in my mind. I can almost see those two armies facing each other across the valley. Yeah. What do you think this imagery is trying to convey?
I think it speaks to the challenges and conflicts we face in life. We often find ourselves caught between opposing forces,
Right.
struggling to navigate the difficult terrain in between.
Yeah.
It can feel like a lonely and isolating experience.
That's so true.
Yeah.
We all have our own valleys to cross. But what I find interesting is that the valley isn't the final destination.
Right.
It's a passage, a
Yeah.
path that leads somewhere.
Exactly. And I think that's an important point to remember when we're going through tough times.
Right.
The valley is not meant to be a permanent state of being.
Yeah.
It's a journey that ultimately leads us to the other side of the mountain.
And speaking of overcoming challenges, our next verse for Monday, Romans 5:3, talks about how we can find strength even in the midst of difficult times, says in English. And not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience.
And in Spanish. Y no solo esto, sino que también nos gloriamos en las tribulaciones, sabiendo que la tribulación produce paciencia.
Now, this is a verse that I think a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah.
Why would we glory in tribulations.
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Right.
But I think the key is in the second part of the verse.
Okay.
Knowing that tribulation worketh patience. It's about recognizing that challenges, while difficult, can also be opportunities for growth.
It's like that saying, pressure makes diamonds.
Exactly.
It's through facing and overcoming adversity that we become stronger and more resilient.
And patience is such a valuable quality to cultivate. It helps us to persevere through difficult times, to trust in God's timing, and to see the bigger picture even when things are tough.
So far, we've seen themes of rejoicing in truth, remembering our worth, and finding strength in challenges. Let's see what Tuesday's verses have in store for us. Off with Psalm 13, verse 6. A beautiful expression of gratitude. I will sing to the Lord, for he has dealt bountifully with me.
And in Spanish, cantaré a Jehová porque me ha hecho bien.
There's such a simplicity and sincerity to that sentiment, a recognition of God's goodness in our lives.
It's a reminder to cultivate a heart of thankfulness, even amidst life challenges. The Spanish phrase, me ha hecho bien, emphasizes the personal impact of God's actions, the way his goodness directly benefits us.
It's a good reminder to count those blessings. But now let's shift gears a bit and look at Matthew chapter 7, verse 2, a verse that always gives me pause. For with the judgment you use, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you.
And in Spanish, porque con el juicio con que juzgáis, seréis juzgados, y con la medida con que medís os será medido.
Okay, I have to admit, this one makes me a little uncomfortable. It's like a cosmic boomerang. Whatever we put out there comes right back at us.
It's a powerful principle, isn't it? The Spanish translation, with its repetition of juzgáis and medís, really drives home that sense of reciprocity, that our actions have consequences.
It's a bit daunting, to be honest. Does this mean we have to be perfect in our judgments, always getting it right? What if we make a mistake?
I think the key takeaway here isn't about achieving some impossible standard of perfection, but about approaching judgment with humility and self-awareness.
So more about checking ourselves before we judge others too harshly.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we are all flawed, we all make mistakes, and extending the same grace to others that we hope to receive.
It's like that saying, judge not lest you be judged, right? But how do we balance that with the need to discern right from wrong, to call out injustice when we see it?
That's a really important point. It's not about becoming passive or condoning wrongdoing. It's about recognizing that our primary focus should be on our own hearts and actions, striving to align ourselves with God's will before pointing fingers at others.
So more inward reflection than outward condemnation.
Precisely. And that brings us back to Psalm 13.6. Recognizing God's goodness in our lives should lead us to a place of humility, understanding that we are recipients of grace, not dispensers of judgment.
That's a really insightful connection. Listener, I'd love for you to reflect on that. How might cultivating a heart of gratitude toward God influence your approach to judging others? Could it lead to more compassion, more understanding?
It's a question worth pondering. Now let's move on to Wednesday, March 19th. We'll start with 1 John chapter 4, verse 19. This verse is a beautiful reminder of the source of our love. We love because he first loved us.
And in Spanish, nosotros le amamos a él porque él nos amó primero. There's something so comforting about knowing that God's love precedes our own, that it's not dependent on anything we do.
Absolutely. It's a foundational truth of the Christian faith. And notice how the Spanish emphasizes the personal nature of this exchange. Nosotros le amamos a él. We love him, specifically him, because he first loved us.
It's like this beautiful cycle. God's love initiates and our love responds.
Exactly. It's not about earning God's love, but about recognizing and responding to the love he has already poured out on us.
Now let's look at Acts chapter 4, verse 12, a verse that often sparks debate. Salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given to mankind by which we must be saved.
And in Spanish, y en ningún otro hay salvación, porque no hay otro nombre bajo el cielo dado a los hombres en que podamos ser salvos.
This is a bold claim, isn't it? It seems to exclude anyone who doesn't believe in Jesus.
It's definitely a statement that challenges us to think deeply about what we believe. But I think it's crucial to understand this verse within the context of God's love, which we just explored in 1 John.
So how do these two verses work together? One emphasizes God's initiating love, the other, the exclusivity of Jesus for salvation.
I think Acts 4.1 is a natural extension of 1 John 4.19. It's saying that God's love for humanity is so vast, so all-encompassing, that he provided the only way for us to be reconciled to him through Jesus.
It's like God offering a lifeline, the only way to bridge the gap created by sin and separation.
Precisely. And I think the Spanish translation really reinforces this idea of salvation being a gift, something we receive en que podamos ser salvos.
It's not about limiting options, but about highlighting the one true path that leads to life.
Exactly. And that brings us to a crucial question for you, listener. How does understanding the depth of God's love and the exclusivity of Jesus' sacrifice impact your own faith and your relationship with Him? Does it make you want to share that love with others?
That's a powerful question to consider. Let's move on to Thursday, March 20th, and explore some verses about putting faith into action.
Welcome back to Learn Bible Languages. We're in the home stretch of our deep dive, and I'm eager to see what insights our final verses reveal.
Me too. It's Thursday, March 20th, and we're starting with Psalm 119, verse 101, which talks about actively resisting temptation. I have restrained my feet from every evil path that I might keep your word.
And in Spanish, de todo mal camino contuve mis pies para guardar tu palabra.
I love the visual imagery here, this idea of consciously choosing the right path, even when surrounded by tempting detours.
It speaks to the importance of intentionality in our walk with God. The Spanish contuve mis pies, literally, I held back my feet, emphasizes that element of active resistance, of making a conscious choice to follow God's word.
It's not just about avoiding evil, it's about actively pursuing what's good. Which brings us to our next verse, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 27. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to act.
And in Spanish, no niegues el bien a quien es debido cuando tuvieres poder para hacerlo.
This verse feels like a direct call to action. It's not enough to simply abstain from wrongdoing. We're also called to actively do good in the world.
Absolutely. The Spanish no niegues, meaning do not deny, adds a sense of urgency, almost a plea to not miss opportunities to extend kindness and generosity.
So we have these two verses, one focused on resisting evil, the other on actively doing good. Do you see a connection between the two? Or are they two sides of the same coin?
I think you're right on the mark there. Both verses highlight the practical outworking of faith. It's not enough to have right beliefs. We're called to live them out, to embody them in our actions.
So faith isn't passive. It's an active force that shapes how we navigate the world.
Exactly. It's about aligning our actions with our beliefs. Letting our faith inform how we treat others, how we use our resources, how we respond to challenges.
Listener, what about you? What's one practical way you can apply these verses to your life this week? Is there an area where you need to hold back from temptation, an opportunity to do good that you might be overlooking?
Those are questions worth reflecting on.